In this tutorial, I'll show you how to use cremated remains in your resin projects. This is a memorial pyramid with cremated ashes at the bottom layer. So let me show you how I did that. So I've been working on this project for a few weeks now, and I've poured about 6 layers into a pyramid mold. Pyramids are made upside down, so this is going to be the last layer with cremated remains inside of it. For the first 6 layers, I added in dried funeral flowers, as well as little objects that my client asked me to include that are sentimental objects, like a little pin and a little piece of a sweater and an engraved stone. So I've already finished most of the pyramid, and I'm gonna work on this last layer. I've already mixed up my resin, and I'm pouring it into my mold. This is KS Resin Liquid Cast. It's the resin I use for all of my resin castings. And I don't want to fill it up all the way to the top. I'm just going to fill it about halfway. First, I'm grabbing my toothpick and running it along the edges of the last layer. Bubbles tend to settle there, so I just want to make sure I prop the bubbles up before I add in my ashes. And in this Ziploc bag is the cremated remains. I'm gonna slowly pour it into my layer. I just want to make sure that everything ends up in my resin and not in the air or on my hands. So I'm gonna just carefully place all of that in and try to empty every piece into the resin. I've emptied the bag and you can see it's completely empty, and that's my goal with these projects, is to make sure I don't miss any ash and I put it all in. And next I'm grabbing my popsicle stick and mixing the resin with the ashes. So I'm gonna work very carefully and slowly, just to be respectful and make sure I don't accidentally blow away any of the ash or spill it over. Once the ashes are mixed in the resin, the color will darken a bit and the ashes will sink to the bottom. It's also normal for a lot of bubbles to form during this process because the ashes will release some oxygen. All ashes are very different. Some are lighter colored, some are darker colored, some are finer, and some are a little bit chunkier. But the goal here is to completely immerse the ashes in the resin so that it's in that layer and it's fully encased and protected. And for this project, I'm placing ashes in the last layer because it's a pyramid that's made upside down. So you would use the same exact strategy for any piece that's made upside down, like a sphere or a dome. But if you are making something facing up, like a block, like a square block, a hexagon block, then you would do this in your first layer instead of your last layer because you want the ashes to be in the background. And the process is completely the same. Now I've mixed in all my ashes into this layer. I'm gonna scrape my popsicle stick on the side of the mold just to make sure I get every little last bit inside of this casting and not on my popsicle stick. So I let my resin sit for about 10 minutes, just so more of the bubbles can form and rise. And I'm grabbing my heat gun and going over this layer very quickly just to pop all the bubbles that are there on the surface. I let the resin sit for about 10 minutes and then went over it with my heat gun one more time. So the bubbles can be quite challenging, but just allow the bubbles 10 minutes to rise between each time you use the heat gun, and don't do it more than 2 or 3 times. And be conscious of your pot life. Mine is about 45 minutes. And if I let the bubbles rise for about 10 minutes in between, then that means I can do this about 2 or 3 times pretty safely. You don't want to get to the end of your pot life and do this because it will cause the resin to overheat. And also make sure not to leave the heat gun in one spot for too long because that can also cause it to overheat. Now this layer is finished. I'm gonna check on it again in 10 minutes and use the heat gun if I need to, and that would be my third and final time. Other than that, I'm gonna let it sit and cure overnight. I'm here the next day and I'm gonna demold this pyramid. You can see my resin is cured, and I'm taking the mold out of the casing, and here it is. I'm really excited to see how this turned out. I really hope she loves it because she's a really sweet client who's going through a lot, and I hope this will help her grieve. And here's what the finished piece looks like. And now I'm gonna just clean up the edges. I have this old box cutter that I like to use sometimes. It's a little bit easier than the deburring tool, I think. It gives me a little bit more control. I'm just scraping the sharp edges off and any little overflow that I have. And I'll continue to do this on all sides until the piece is finished. Now the project is finished and I hope she really loves it. It was very sweet and emotional. These pieces always are. But thanks for watching, and I hope this helps, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.